What's good, sports fans? Welcome to another edition of the Buzzer Beater on the Buffoon Sports Talk Network. I'm your host, Troy Alexander, and got this solo episode for you today. I know it's been a while since the Buffoons, have recorded anything. Just a lot going on with all of us right now, so it's been really hard to get everybody in the same room, virtually, obviously, and just record an episode. And with work, um, families, just life, and kind of what's going on in the world right now, politics and all this, it's just been really rough for everybody, especially us. So I apologize for the lack of content, but that being said, I kind of just wanted to talk about a few things that are going on in the NBA right now, and not going to be too long of a video today. So since there's only 1/4 of the circus with us, with everybody today, I guess I'll just get right into it. So a few storylines have come out recently. Um, I'm probably only going to hit on a few of them. And the first one I wanted to start with was a possible trade. Actually, there's a few trades that are being discussed right now, especially with the NBA draft coming up really soon. There's the Warriors possibly moving the number 2 pick, and maybe Andrew Wiggins' contract for another star, amongst other pieces involved. But there's this rumor going around that DeMar DeRozan is maybe on the block, and the Lakers are interested in him. And that's the first thing that I want to dissect. So when I look at DDR, DeMar DeRozan, first thing that comes to mind: athleticism, great mid-range jump shooter, and great attacker of the rim. But when I think on the flip side of his negative aspects, it's obviously defending. He played the small forward position in San Antonio this past season, and he's relatively small to be playing that position, considering just how dynamic a lot of the other wings / threes are in the league. You think of like Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James, those type of guys. Like, he's really small when you really look at other guys at his position. And I know there's like, he's not always going to be guarding those guys one-on-one, considering how the NBA is with switches and how defenses are, schemes and all that good stuff. But DeMar just historically hasn't ever been a great defender. And you can trace that back to his Toronto days. And I think oftentimes when there's a possible trade happening, a lot of people look at just the negative aspects and what the player doesn't bring to the table rather than what he does do well. But in this particular situation, I think DeMar is an awful fit for the Lakers, because when I look at the Lakers roster, they're lacking 2 things at the most, which is playmaking and shooting. Those to me are the 2 biggest things that the Lakers lacked. Yes, I understand they're just coming off an NBA championship, but I mean, outside of like the 2017, 2018 Warriors, like, there really hasn't ever been a perfect team per se. So the Lakers aren't going to be that with or without DeMar, but I think it makes them worse, especially if they're giving up Danny Green and Kyle Kuzma, who are the reported 2 players that are going to be involved in that trade if it does happen. My whole thing is, if the Lakers are lacking shooting as it is, why are you going to give up Danny Green? I understand Danny Green is very inconsistent as far as a shooter, and in all honesty, he wasn't even that great of a defender, and he's recognized as a 3-and-D player. I watched most of the NBA playoffs, and it's really not even just this year. Danny Green's kind of been inconsistent the past few years, and especially if you look at his numbers, that statement backs it up. So I'm just like I'm trying to understand how the Lakers get better with DeMar. I mean, maybe your playmaking becomes a little better, but you're going to get attacked way easily on defense. I mean, DeMar is like a career. I have the numbers here. I don't know them at the top of my heart, at the top of my head, but I know DeMar is like a 26 or 27% career 3-point shooter. And part of the way that lots of players are effective nowadays in the NBA is you have to be able to shoot and you have to be able to defend. I mean, you've got to do at least one of the two. And more so with shooting is the 3-point game, and DeMar is not that. But then people come at me with, well, look at Kawhi Leonard. He's not a great 3-point shooter. He's the mid-range god, right? Yes, that's true. But Kawhi also impacts the game heavily on the defensive end. So Kawhi is able to affect the games in more way than just one or two ways. I mean, that's what great players are, right? They impact the game in so many different ways. That's why they're superstars. And I just don't see how the Lakers get better with that trade. And giving up Kyle Kuzma, I mean, who's due for an extension soon anyway. I mean, he's been rumored to be getting shipped out of LA for the past year and a half anyway. So I don't expect Kuzma to be there probably next. Well, he might be there beginning of next season, but I don't think Kuzma's going to be there for the whole next year. And I mean, do the Lakers make a trade? Do they move Kuzma and Green? Probably. I just don't think DeMar is the answer for the Lakers. The Lakers need shooters. The Lakers need some playmaking, especially if Rajon Rondo walks in free agency. LeBron can't be doing everything, especially at his age. So, yeah, Lakers got to make some moves, I think. I just don't think DeMar DeRozan is the right move. So, on to the next topic, and I may close the podcast out after that one, depending on how much time is left. But Russell Westbrook hits the news this past week and says reports say that he wants to trade from Houston. So, as soon as this came out, I had a lot of initial thoughts, but my first two thoughts were, James Harden does it again. He alienates another teammate. And then my second thought was, wow, who's going to take on a 31, 32-year-old point guard with a history of injuries and one of the worst contracts in the league? And then I thought, well, then again, I didn't think that OKC was going to be able to move him last summer, and look what happened. They moved him to Houston. So anything is really possible, I guess. But the thing is with that is, like, I love James Harden. He's one of my favorite players. I love his views on things, about just life and what's going on outside in the world right now. I love James Harden. He's probably my favorite player, to be honest, or second favorite player. But there's kind of a pattern here, right? I mean, he gets to Houston in, I think it was 2012 or 2013. I think it might have been the year after they lost in the finals. The year after the Thunder lost to the Heat in the finals, I think in like 2012 or 2013. He gets traded to Houston. And they try pairing him with Dwight Howard. That doesn't work out. They get bounced in the first round a few times, I believe. And you can say that has something to do with Dwight Howard's back injuries, whatever you want to call it. But that doesn't work out. And then I think Daryl Morey even tried pairing Harden with Ty Lawson for a little bit. Obviously, Lawson had a lot of issues in life and didn't work out. So then you try pairing Harden with Chris Paul. And say what you want about Chris Paul. You know, he's had a history of being kind of bossy, kind of a history of irritating teammates. That's fine. Say what you want about Chris Paul's personality. But all I know is he's a great leader and he's one of the best point guards of all time. Say what you want about his track record in the playoffs. He hasn't done this. He hasn't gotten a championship. If you look at his numbers, he's one of the most efficient players of all time. Playoffs, his PER, it's insane. He's one of the, you give me Chris Paul any day, I'll take Chris Paul. And they get probably this close to getting to the finals. They get to the conference finals. and they're up and they just end up choking. Chris Paul goes down with an injury and they lose. And that doesn't work out, and it's time for a change. So Chris Paul gets dealt, and then Harden gets his buddy Westbrook. Now, Westbrook wants out. And rumor has it, according to reports, that Westbrook wants out because he doesn't like the culture in Houston, and he wants to be able to play the same way he played in Oklahoma City, which is ball dominant point guard, I control the offense, get out of my freaking way type of thing. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. I'm sorry, Westbrook, but unless you're a great three-point shooter or just a shooter at all, usually ISOs don't work. Come playoff time, they work. Isolation usually can work in the playoffs because the game slows down and you usually throw your offensive schemes out the window. And it just comes down to this team's best player or players against the opposing team's best player or players. And that works to an extent, but not to Westbrook's extent. Like, the guy can't shoot the ball. Like, he's gone down over the course of, like, since his MVP season, like 4 years ago. If you look at his true shooting percentage and I don't want to go into advanced analytics and all that crap, but if you look at his numbers, especially shooting, they plummet every single year. And I just, like, if Westbrook wants to play that way and a team is okay playing that way, okay, find him another suitor, but they're not winning anything. I can tell you that. They're not going to win anything. I mean, rumor has it the Clippers want Westbrook. I don't see how Russell helps the Clippers. Clippers need playmaking for sure, but Clippers also could use some shooting, and they don't really have room for Westbrook, if you ask me. Like, they'd have to ship out, like, Patrick Beverly. They'd have to find some type of package. I think the Clippers just get worse with Westbrook. So Westbrook wants that. Okay, great. Control your own team. Dominate the offense, but just be content with never winning. I guess that's what he wants, but I just don't get it. And as far as Harden's concerned, like I said, I love James Harden, but I just don't think there's any coincidence that players kind of get tired of the play style, which is just ISO the ball and just go to work and just space the floor out and let me do my thing. I'll find you for an open shot. I guess some guys are okay with it, but there's no coincidence that other stars have been alienated from Harden. So does Harden have to adjust to other players? Yes, I for sure think so. And I mean, damn, Harden's future might be up in the air too. I mean, how long does he stick it out in Houston and say, well, just keep getting me this guy and this guy and this guy, and then we'll see if it works? Like, how long is it going to be until Harden is like, no, I think it's time for a change? I mean, rumor has it Philadelphia, because of Daryl Morey leaving Houston and going to Philadelphia, there's rumor that maybe Harden wants to follow his footsteps. And I just don't see what Houston does at this point. Like, they've traded all of, like, most of their first round picks. They barely have any room for this to get anybody. I mean, if they're trying to win now, I think they're probably screwed for the next year or so, because not only do they not have room or draft picks from getting, Robert Covington and Russell Westbrook the past year and a half, but considering the situation with the NBA and how much money they've lost, like, I don't understand how any team outside of, like, bad teams with salary cap are able to get any of these guys like Westbrook or like Drew Holiday. Like, the only teams that have a lot of cap space are, like, bottom feeder teams, like the Atlanta Hawks, New York Knicks, the Charlotte Hornets, like teams like that. So I don't know. As far as suitors for Westbrook, I don't think the Clippers should do that move, but you never know. I didn't think Houston should trade for Westbrook, and they did. So you never know what type of craziness you're going to run into in the NBA. But I guess time will tell. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Buzzer Beater, guys. I'm hoping we'll get the full circus back here soon to just kind of talk about sports in general. And because I would love to bring you guys more content and just do what we love to do, which is talk about sports. So I appreciate you guys so much for watching this. Subscribe to us. We're on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts, we're on there. So thanks for tuning in, guys. And until next time.